think helps really propel him a lot further forward in his career.
Yeah, this is for a lot of players, this is going to be that thing that starts them off really, since it has been a little while since Leipzig, and with everything ramping up, with everything kicking off, this becomes that big moment as we have ShoWTimE going up against HellraiseR. These players to warm up, because we're about to get into tournament season here with the WCS. The circuit's going to be going non-stop. We have several events that are coming up without too long of breaks in each other. So this Challenger, this is your first primer as we get into the second half of the year for StarCraft 2.
Indeed, and of course we are going to be starting off our first game in the bottom left-hand corner of the map, top of the blue Protoss player. It is ShoWTimE.
German crowd favorite, and his opponent in the northeast, the red Protoss player, we have HellraiseR.
Actually just joined the team Iron Chain not but a few days ago. I want to say like maybe a week or so ago, and he's already done his team some good justice.
So we have in PvP, I think your mic might have just died, Roddy.
Oh, okay.
We have in this PvP some. I actually can talk about this a little bit now since I've been playing this. We have the gas openings, of course, and the way the gateways always get put up towards the front, allowing you to kind of try to block that off with the Adept if you need to. And with the gas being taken, you have that usually slow start, right? And it comes down to whether you see the big pushes on the Adept openings or the Stalker openings.
Yeah, we end up seeing a lot of those kind of early openings. So the Adept opening, the kind of advantages for it is that you get some really good scouting information on your opponent. You potentially get to kill a couple of workers if you're lucky. And the Stalker opening just kind of gives you that safety. And it's also just better prepares you versus a lot of the Oracle openings that you end up seeing from a lot of pros players these days.
Yeah, getting caught off guard in this matchup really hurts. I mean, I learned very quickly when I started playing some Protoss, I was like, oh, the Oracle's still 2 shots these workers. I was already used to them taking 3 hits to kill my SCVs.
Yeah, that's always a fun one. I think my other favorite one is when you're learning PvP and you suddenly realize, wait a second, Dark Templar, oh, this is a thing. And when I open with Stargate, I have to like be prepared with Oracle energy to make sure I can Revelation them. Otherwise, I just die outright. It's not fun.
Yeah, so both players have gotten probes into each other's bases. They've scouted out everything that there is to see. We'll have a fast sentry opening out of ShoWTimE. Interesting to see this. I mean, hallucination for scouting later is nice, but he's basically saying that he's not concerned about having like a depths run through or anything and just bypassing his first defenses.
Yeah, and honestly, that is a bit of a concern just because the sentry, for those who don't know, does not actually keep out Adept shades. If you force field, it's not going to actually prevent those shades from getting up into your main base and causing all sorts of problems. You can still deal with it by just having a pylon ready to be planted at that wall, go for a complete wall off for a moment, and then you cancel it as soon as the Adept Shade is done. So you can still avoid things, but looks like it's not really going to be too big of a concern as both the players end up going with the Stalker openings, and both of them going to Stargate. Oh god, Nate, you've seen some Stargate versus Stargate games, I'm sure.
It can get weird. Well, I've watched Rotterdam stream, so I know that
every game then.
Phoenix is a funny unit, and especially in Protoss versus Protoss, then when both players start going into Phoenix, or even if you have one that just wants to go for the Oracle and you hit Oracle versus Oracle, Oracle versus Phoenix, the capabilities of dealing with the other becomes very difficult. So we do have an Oracle being made by HellraiseR, and ShoWTimE is going to go for the Phoenix. So as long as that Phoenix is there, or if he makes a second one that catches the Oracle, dealing with it should be pretty easy, but there's still quite a few Stalkers that look like they want to pressure the front as well.
Yeah, make their way across the map. These Stalkers, I mean, there are a larger number of Stalkers over here for HellraiseR, but he's going to be going up a ramp, and that always means that he's going to be taking a couple of those early pot shots, so immediately just going to be backing up, just getting some scouting information.
He also has the shield battery at the natural that's going to allow him to make those Stalkers a little bit beefier in the long run. The Hallucinated Phoenix runs past HellraiseR's Oracle, so he should have some idea of what is going on. The question now becomes, where is ShoWTimE's Phoenix? Yeah, he's just got it in his main patrolling, so he's ready for the Oracle. Not too much of an issue. Now, is this Oracle going to be used aggressively to try and help push this?
He might try and move into the mineral line at the same time he pokes over at the front, but I feel like this kind of opening, this is like the best case situation for ShoWTimE. In the old days of PvP, this would be a death sentence because you send your Oracle in, the Phoenix immediately pick it off, and you're like, okay, well now I just have the lead on Phoenix in the Stargate War, so you can't really catch up. But I feel like it's not really the case as much anymore. You've seen some Protoss players find ways to transition out, even if they end up potentially losing that Oracle.
Yeah, and we see the Phoenix are going to chase this Oracle, try to shut it down. Stalkers come over to support. They're able to get a little bit of hull damage on one of these Phoenix, preventing him from being able to do too much, as more Stalkers will be added at home. The shield batteries in the mineral line to help keep anything that's defending here alive as Blink is being researched.
Yeah, that Blink going to be very critical for HellraiseR to help deal with the kind of annoying Phoenix count. And you'll notice that in the production tab, you don't see ShoWTimE producing a ton more Phoenix. Just the 3 Phoenix is enough to pick off a couple of probes here and there, just gradually, slowly but surely secure that economic edge, which I feel like really plays in ShoWTimE's playstyle. He is a macro Protoss.
Yeah, and it's also going to allow him to keep tabs on what HellraiseR is up to. As long as those Phoenix just come in and poke, they don't really need to kill anything. They just need to say, okay, what's your army composition looking like? Are you building a lot of Stalkers? Well, I have that robotics facility. We have ShoWTimE already getting Immortals out. So building that Immortal count early on in Protoss versus Protoss especially is really nice, since you usually end up seeing things move a little bit more towards that charge focus with Archons support and a lot of Immortals. And when you have that army, the more Stalkers you have, it's generally not going to be as effective if you build too many in the early game.
Yeah, you get into a bit of a dicey situation. We've still seen some Protoss players be able to make use of those Stalkers before it gets into those kind of escalating, scaling numbers of Immortals, but I feel like the timing for that's going to be passing pretty shortly, as a 3rd Immortal's on the way. Blink is now finished researching, and this game, I just feel like it's starting to go more and more in ShoWTimE's favor.
Composition-wise, he's setting himself up really nicely. That Immortal account is so important, as you mentioned. He's got his 3rd one on the way. Blink being done is nice, but I mean, to look at late game tech, Charge is starting for ShoWTimE, this upgrade. I mean, we know that Stalkers are not going to do tremendously well versus Zealots, especially with how fast they can chase them. Having that Blink is not going to have a huge factor when you also have Immortals shooting down behind them. The Stalkers are on the map. It looks like they're able to grab one of the Phoenix, but look at this explosion of gateways.
Yeah, the gateway explosion going to be very, very important here for ShoWTimE to be able to contend with his opponent, but he does still have those Immortals. He needs to make sure these Immortals are going to be safe versus the Blink Stalkers. Stalker's going to try and trigger the hardened shields, pick up any units they can. One stray force, so just preventing those Stalkers from getting too much kind of surface area to attack there. But notice that ShoWTimE has not been able to secure that 3rd just yet. This is just a nice little poke out from HellraiseR, because he has a halfway finished up 3rd. It kind of delays ShoWTimE's a little bit.
Yep, and he sees that the 3rd base is close to finishing now for HellraiseR, so the Phoenix will come in. They're going to try to just grab a few of these probes, make their way in, make their way out, keeping tabs on the Stalker count. He should say to himself, well, there's quite a few Stalkers on the map, so in terms of where the army investments have gone, we have 13 Stalkers versus 4 Immortals. And of course, with Charge wrapping up and that +2 attack on the way, Zealots are going to become a factor, and now being added to the mix are the Archons. So I really like the composition balance for ShoWTimE. He got the first attack upgrade a little bit earlier, but the chrono boost was pretty fairly balanced out. However, we haven't had that +2 started by HellraiseR, who's just moving into this composition a little more slowly despite having that faster 3rd.
Yeah, you know, HellraiseR, he does have the faster 3rd, he has a higher worker count, but it really is about that composition that you keep going to, and it's about the fact that ShoWTimE was able to get up all this tech kind of uncontested, and the real problem is that HellraiseR doesn't seem like he's going to have the tech on the way anytime soon anyways. He's got Charge, sure, but I mean, he doesn't have anything close to the Immortal count. He doesn't have the Templar archives really producing a ton of these Archons just yet.
And this is how you play tight PvP. He's got the +2 attack wrapping up. He has all of the other upgrades that he needs. He's got the Archon support to deal with Zealots, and he has the Zealots to deal with the Stalkers and the Immortals to just kill anything that gets in his way. The Warp Prism has come out for ShoWTimE. He'll have the ability to reinforce, and I think that with the army composition he's built, that there hasn't been a crazy amount of time for HellraiseR to benefit off this 3rd. That army is big, but it is a lot of Stalkers, which just do not contribute a whole lot to these fights generally.
Honestly, Nate, I feel like those stasis wards are going to be the biggest thing for HellraiseR. He needs to have those land because, quite frankly, ShoWTimE is sitting up in about 12 army supply, and it's better army supply than his opponent. So if those stasis traps can make the difference, that is how HellraiseR sees his path to victory.
Yeah, interesting use of his Oracle, but they're going to engage down the bottom of this ramp, and we see the Zealots running on each other's. The Phoenix will try to grab a few of these units, but you have the Immortals still in the back, hanging in there. There are a lot of these Stalkers, but with the War Prism, he just needs to get another wave of Zealots. If he can deal with the Archons, then his Immortals should be able to very easily get on top of these Stalkers, and we see just the power of that army. A couple of Zealots actually come in from the backside from HellraiseR. He's been able to clean up a few of the Immortals. He's done a really good job microing this fight, but this is still just a powerful army for ShoWTimE.
Yeah, even that one Immortal is going to make a world of difference here, but I have to hand it to HellraiseR. He does a pretty good job, like you said.
He did a great job of focus firing down the Immortals.
Exactly, it was that, and I think even ShoWTimE trying to come down that ramp, it got into a bit of an awkward spot where all of his Archons weren't quite at the front line to start attacking those Zealots, so the Zealots for HellraiseR kind of won out in the melee war, and with that, he was able to power through and take out some of ShoWTimE's Immortals. Maybe that's going to be enough. Stasis Trap getting triggered. It seems like ShoWTimE has a good read on that. Does he read it on the second one? No, he doesn't. 5 Zealots trapped in.
And that's really painful, as 6 of his Zealots now unable to add anything to the fight. The Stalkers are completely forward, trying to grab the War Prism. He does get it, but not before more of these Zealots are able to warp in. So there's that fight, but the 3 Archons should be able to clean a lot of these up very nicely.
Yeah, the Archons tearing through all of those Zealots. We got a couple more Zealots in the backside over the 3rd getting picked off, but now the Immortal gonna get under attack. And wow, remember that HellraiseR has that higher worker count, and he just reset the army, the main advantage of ShoWTimE.
That was a gnarly engagement for HellraiseR, the one at the bottom of that ramp. Really, I mean, the Stalkers generally, they die so fast to these forces, but he made the most of everything that he had in a really nice way. And that worker count has been favoring HellraiseR, as ShoWTimE is only just now starting to saturate that 3rd base. So HellraiseR, we see not only with holding does he get himself that advantage, but he didn't have to make any further investments into economy. So every dollar he's been making the last few minutes of this game has been going straight into that Zealot Archon ball. And I don't know how ShoWTimE's going to hold this.
Yeah, he doesn't even have something like a Stasis Trap or anything, some sort of miracle play to help make this work. His opponent even has a Warp Prism, so he can do that extra micro potential. ShoWTimE already lost his Warp Prism. ShoWTimE doesn't really have any shield batteries. I think he's finishing up some shield batteries over by the 3rd, so maybe that'll help out a little bit. But man, this is really going to need to be a miracle engagement.
Yeah, there is an absurd number of Zealots over here for HellraiseR. 29 Zealots are going to charge in, and we have 3 Archons with the shield batteries, but there's still other units here to help defend against this, or excuse me, to help push in here with HellraiseR. He's going to micro back behind this mineral line.
Oh my god. Honestly, Nate, I don't even know that HellraiseR needed the Archons to try and take this engagement. There's going to be the GG. HellraiseR already showing a bit of an upset and taking game number 1 versus the favorite player in the group.
Yeah, that was really well done, honestly. Like, I mean, just in all the PvPs that I've been watching since I've been playing it, and the PvPs I've played myself, that Immortal count seems to be such a huge important factor. Getting the Zealot charge upgrade faster, having your supply be in the Immortal Archon Zealot, rather than the Stalkers, because the Stalkers didn't even get the Prism at the start. It wasn't like they made a key snipe, but I think it was during the fight having the Stalkers target fire the Immortals behind him because he forced himself down that ramp.
I think it was also, you know, there was like multiple facets to that because he was forcing himself down the ramp, and I kind of understand it. He saw how much earlier the 3rd was. He was worried that, hey, my opponent's saturating his 3rd. I only own like 44 or 45 workers. I kind of do need to go at some point. I need to take advantage of my army advantage right now. So he kind of forces himself into the ramp, but the Immortals are in front of the Archons in that situation, and that's when the Zealots get on top of the Immortals, and that's where you want the Archons just obliterating all the Zealots, but that just didn't happen.
It's a bigger ramp than you'll usually fight on if you're fighting on a ramp, but still, it's a ramp. And the other thing that's important to keep in mind is he was able to use the 3rd base, since he was fighting in between the natural and the 3rd, to send the Zealots in from the back, which also really well done. It made it difficult for him to pull the Immortals away from the army as they were taking way too many shots from the Stalkers.
Yeah. I was a little bit skeptical also, I'm not going to lie, when I first saw the blink forward to snipe off the Warp Prism. I was like, you're going to get the Warp Prism, but you're going to lose all of your Stalkers with these Zealots. But he had the reinforcements of the exact composition he needed, all of those Archons coming on in. HellraiseR kind of had the plan and was able to execute it there.
Yeah, it was really well done.
Yeah.
I feel like in PvP, when you get into these situations, you either want to make that big attack with your +2 and the charge coming in to kill them when they grab that 3rd, or and it's such a dangerous thing to do because we talked about it, like HellraiseR had the 3rd faster, so if he just tries to play the same game, it can be really dangerous for him to just try to saturate the 3rd later than his opponent, because you know, that economy can still snowball for you. But I like it. I like seeing that, because he made a good amount of Stalkers early on that you generally, like, he didn't get to do a whole lot of harass with them. He didn't really pick anything off. He poked an Immortal a few times, but that was about it.
I really feel like that entire game was a lead up of ShoWTimE getting ahead in his army. He got the kind of better openings where ShoWTimE went for the Phoenix opening. He went for the multiple Phoenix. He was up against the Oracle opening, and the Oracle didn't die or get picked off or anything, but it didn't really get a whole lot of use out in the earlier stages at least. So really, I feel like it was just HellraiseR, really one good engagement, one engagement that was able to turn around the game. So that's the kind of difficult thing, though, Nate, because you play a lot of StarCraft. When you play, know the situation.
Yeah, when you play high-level StarCraft, it's not uncommon, even if you have a player that's favored. You get into an advantageous position, and you see that moment of opportunity where you think that you can strike, and it's just that extra little bit of, you know, you're trying to grab that. You think you should be able to do it. He had a better army. He had the army supply advantage, but he didn't have quite the position that he needed, and he thought he could make up for that with his micro, and it just didn't end up working out for him. So that's a really nice spot for HellraiseR to be in to start the series off 1-0, but I don't think there's any reason to doubt that ShoWTimE can bring this back. He's still a world-class player. We still see him making extremely deep runs all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's still going to have that opportunity to turn things around as we get ready to go into game number 2 on Eastwatch. Should be a fun one.
Eastwatch.
Yeah, and this is, again, that same thing, is that ShoWTimE is still ShoWTimE. You have to take not just one game against him, where he was, quite frankly, able to get a little bit ahead in some ways, but wasn't able to secure that engagement, the correct engagement. Securing a good engagement versus a player like ShoWTimE, though, that's not something that's easy to just repeat. HellraiseR is really going to have to work for this.
Yep. I'm excited to see how this goes. Eastwatch, of course, is a massive map.
Oh yeah.
And that one, I don't like it that much. It feels so scary to step outside of your base, because there's the high ground doesn't really exist anywhere in the middle. It's just this maze of rocks that you can knock down, and then your opponent is always so far away. Maybe I like it more playing Protoss because I can recall. But I always feel like whenever I move my army out...
It does feel good to recall.
Yeah, whenever I move my army out, I'm like, this map is so big. If something hits in my base right now while I'm in the middle of the map, it's going to take me like a minute to get back and try to defend.
Yeah, bit of a mess sometimes, I think, when you're trying to deal with that. But here we go. We're going to be starting down here at the bottom left-hand corner of the map, sitting up 1-0 in this series. So we have, of course, the red Protoss player. It's HellraiseR.
He showed us a great first game. He faces off against the blue Protoss player all the way up in the northeast. You guys know him. He's ShoWTimE.
All right, and I know this is something that I learned during my time as an observer, Nate, is that people really like it when the player that spawns on the bottom is on the bottom of the overlay.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, it takes our graphics guys for a little bit of a trip.
Oh no, I think that one was me. That was my fault.
But well, you know, we'll get it together. It's all good. Yeah. It was the game audio last game, so I got supposed to do the observing. I thought your mic died. I was like, oh my god, everyone gets to see how bad my observing is.
No, your observing was fine. I was on your vision. You're doing a good job, man.
I haven't done it a whole lot lately, to be honest with you. Because the players are gonna send their probes out on the map. I wonder if they're. I would like to see them do something different, because I'm like, I always think if it's a giant map, there's always corners to be cut, but it's still the 2 gates at the front. I don't know that I've seen anybody do anything other than the one guy who cannon rushed me. Like, I guess that's still.
Does that only happen from one guy on the ladder? I feel like that's something I see a lot more often.
Yeah,
in PvP.
shout out to Theta Waves on NA. Guy likes to build his base in your base.
All right, well, you're one step closer to qualifying for Challenger, Theta Waves, but yeah, you know, the 2-gate opening is just so unbelievably common and standard. I do like that people are not just opening up with the double Stalker versus double Adept. We saw in that last game kind of the early Sentry opening.
Yes.
You're starting to see some semblances of mix-ups there.
I mean, I'm not like quite the Protoss expert yet, but at least in like the games that I've tried to watch to learn a bit more about the matchup, and all of the games that I've played, I haven't seen the Sentry play very much, so I do like it. I mean, the utility's there. You're just always scared about the Adepts, because if it is fast Adepts and they go straight past, it can get tough. But the Stalkers from HellraiseR also are his way of being a little bit safer against, you know, the potential as you get talking about like that fast Oracle, because you just basically want to crank out just Stalkers at the start to be safe against most of that early harass play.
Yeah, and we're actually going to be seeing pretty much the same openings as the last game from each of the respective players. ShoWTimE going for the Stalker Sentry, and honestly, of the players that I would expect to just do the same sort of build every single game or most games, it'd be ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE is that macro player. He's the kind of guy who gets a build, maybe has 1 or 2 variations of it, and just kind of sticks with it and says, I'm going to win in the long term.
He's a player that has the discipline to recognize the mistake that he made in the last game. I'm sure he was you know, hitting himself. He's like, well, it's like, why did I go down that ramp? He's like, you know, and I can't, it's hard to blame him completely because we knew that the stasis wards were there. And if in one of them, when he did end up attacking on that, you know, even ground, he did end up triggering that stasis ward and it did cost him a lot. So his caution wasn't unfounded, but he's definitely wishing that he had taken a different approach to solving that problem on the last map.
Ooh, okay, we got a third gateway here from HellraiseR. No Nexus being thrown down. Blink gonna be chrono boosted out. This is gonna be some hyper aggression coming out from HellraiseR. He really wants to be able to do something. And remember that on Eastwatch there is that ramp going up to the natural. This isn't like Neon Violet Square where you can just kind of walk up from a different angle. You're not really losing that high ground advantage. ShoWTimE uses the energy on the sentry to go for the hallucinate Phoenix Scout. This is going to be valuable in the sense that he'll see what's coming, but he also is losing force field energy.
Yeah, I do like this mostly because if it's going to be based completely around the blink, then the force field's utility is not always there since they'll usually just blink away from it. But it really comes down to the position that he tries to go for since we don't have anything for HellraiseR that should give high ground, right? So ShoWTimE's going to pull back, and he's just going to try to play with the most defensive position possible.
Yeah, his main base, it looks like he may even be giving up this natural because once you move up to your main base, it's really awkward to try and move down the ramp. You can already see that ShoWTimE is kind of saying, I want to poke forward a little bit and maybe get some damage done while you're chipping away at my Nexus, but it's so dangerous to do that he's just going to opt not to do it for now.
Maybe with how late Blink ended up finishing, if he had the energy on the sentry and could have bought himself a little bit of time, then he could have tried to do something on this high ground, but that Nexus, as you mentioned, he is going to give it up. Easy pick off now for HellraiseR. Blink is almost done for both of these players, but because he went down the ramp, he takes a little bit of loss on the way out.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like the trigger on the Guardian Shield, it's like a nice idea, but then he kind of didn't really feel like he needed to commit or wanted to commit over there, so he wasted a lot of time losing out on the Guardian Shield stuff. The Stalkers are still in a bit of a limbo line. Now you can see he's just force fielding out his opponent, but behind this, HellraiseR grabs his Nexus, he grabs a Robo, and yes, there is Blink over here for ShoWTimE Stalkers, but he's basically on quasi-even tech right now.
Yeah, the only advantage he has here as a defender is that shield battery at the top of the ramp, so he can constantly pull back to that. And that'll be nice, but as you mentioned, despite being the aggressor in this game, HellraiseR has the natural faster. His robotics facility comes in at still a good enough time versus the Immortals of ShoWTimE that he's not really behind in any tech, and that was just, I mean, we're seeing just some really smart play out of HellraiseR in this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the beauty of mirror matchups, is that you don't always get to see these massive, massive advantages that come out. A lot of times it's like a subtler thing, but, you know, every so often you'll see someone who says, okay, well, I need to come back in a bit more of a drastic way, so let's just take my natural at the gold.
This is definitely one way to do it. I mean, you want to get that extra resource, but we're seeing now, don't forget, your opponent has Blink, so if he gets some sort of observer high ground vision, the potential to bounce between your bases gets really risky. Since I do imagine that HellraiseR, I mean, because of the advantage that he has, I can see why he might just sit back and defend for a little bit, but if he sends anything out to harass, if he sends anything out to fight, this gets scary because that gold is much further from your main base than you're going to see the rest of your units. But if he's out on the map and keeping HellraiseR contained, it doesn't hurt that much.
Yeah, and remember that HellraiseR doesn't know about that just yet. In fact, if you remember, HellraiseR, he opened up with the Stalkers, so his sentries are a lot later. He doesn't have the energy for Hallucinated Phoenixes just yet. He's about to have it, but then it's also going to be a question, where does he end up scouting? And if he sees all these Stalkers at the front, he might just think, oh, ShoWTimE, are you trying to get aggressive on me? Are you trying to attack me right now on these one bases? Especially if the Stalkers can pick this off. This is such a nice win because ShoWTimE can feign aggression from here.
Yeah, he does not want HellraiseR to go towards that gold base. He wants him to feel like he's being pressured at least a little bit. But HellraiseR's like, all right, you don't want to back off? I'll take one of your Stalkers on the way out. And this is still, I'm really not sure how exactly this is going to play out for him. He has the gold base. He's mining off of it. ShoWTimE's getting his charge. I think we're also seeing him add on to that the Immortal count still, but a Prism is coming in for HellraiseR. And this might be where he says, I'm saturating my natural. I don't need to build workers anymore. He can either take the third, or he can take that Prism and push all the way across the map with his advantage. We saw ShoWTimE fail to do that in the last game, so HellraiseR, you know, keep that in mind.
Yeah, he's going to try his own form, and yes, the Warp Prism is always the ultimate sign from any Protoss player that, yes, they want to move across the map. They want to start getting aggressive pretty shortly. And here we go. The Stalkers might be walking past these really well-positioned pylons here. I love ShoWTimE's vision around the map because he's going to know whether his opponent's coming in from the south or the north side through these pylons. And in a moment, he's going to see the entire army. Oh, no, that Immortal.
No,
that Immortal
rallied across. If he loses this, that's a huge drop here for ShoWTimE, as that Immortal just gets snagged for free. And there is an observer with HellraiseR's army, so the line of sight blocker is not going to be a tool he can use. Of course, the Prism will also grant that vision, and he can bring that straight over. It just blinks right on top of this army. He's got so much. HellraiseR showing no caution in his push into ShoWTimE's base.
And I think it's working right now.
Oh my god, another Immortal move commanded on the rally down the ramp.
Now he's like, wait a second, why do you have so few units? You don't even have a natural. There's the Warp Prison getting sniped off. That's a really big win. Recall up into the main base, but I think this might actually end up backfiring to some extent. He's gonna take some damage as he recalls. Immortal's getting taken out. Another aggressive blink forward. Oh my god, is HellraiseR about to do it? Is he about to take out the favored player in this group?
ShoWTimE base being obliterated as HellraiseR, with some very sharp, very intelligently moved aggressive plays, is able to smack down one of our German hopes here in the WCS Challenger. His next Immortal comes out, it dies. He's trying to warp in a few units, but he just does not have anything behind this now. That gold base, he will not be able to defend it. He still has Stalkers in his base, still has the Immortal. He's holding on for life, but there's not too much of a life left to defend here. He's going to add a few more Zealots. He's buying as much as he can with the gold base income on minerals, but without any tech sort of play, I still don't see like how he's supposed to stop this huge economic advantage. He only has 14 probes.
Yeah, this is a huge problem right now. HellraiseR is in such a good spot. I almost just feel like ShoWTimE's in disbelief right now that he's about to be 2-0, not even like a 2-1.
I'm not sure I see where the play that saves this is. Like, the Charge Lot Immortal is nice, but
Dark Templar. There we go. I don't even think that would work because there's an observer.
Yeah, no.
It'd also take a few years to get up a Dark Templar. Even Dark Shrines take a while.
Like, Charge Zealots are nice in big fights, but in a situation like this where it's just so few numbers, it's very easy for HellraiseR to just either walk back. He walks back. He doesn't even blink. He's like, I don't need to blink. I can just walk it back.
HellraiseR also just discovered the gold, so at the best case situation, yeah, ShoWTimE has to tap out. HellraiseR with a 2-0. Who would have thunk it? I don't know many people who would have predicted it.
It was great play, really. Like, we talked about how ShoWTimE's a player that says, okay, well, I can just do the same thing again. I can make it work. And HellraiseR makes the adaptation. He says, well, instead of kind of playing you at your own game, which I almost lost game one, he's like, you kind of gave me game one because ShoWTimE definitely had the advantage in that before that first fight. But HellraiseR says to himself, I'm going to try to make an adjustment since you opened with the Sentry. I'm going to get more Stalkers than you. I'm going to push very hard since I know you want to expand. It's big map. Eastwatch is the biggest map you're going to play on here. So just really good shot calling with the Stalker count that he went for. The crazy thing for me was, despite being like a one-base blink opening, he did not actually get his blink faster than ShoWTimE.
Yeah.
They finished at the same time, so he just had a few more units. And I think if ShoWTimE knew that, maybe, well, I mean, you know, he has to scout, right? So he wishes he had the Sentry energy, because if he could just force field that ramp, he can't blink past it. But
it's subtle things, Nate. That's what I really love about Protoss versus Protoss, is that it's so many subtleties that just start to escalate and you turn those into massive advantages. And that's exactly what HellraiseR did a masterclass job of doing. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going to a short little break before we hop into our next series, which should be Hero Marine versus DNS. That's going to be a very fun one as well. Hope you guys are looking forward to that one, as we have our lone Terran holding down the line. Nate, I know you're probably a little bit of a fan of that. But ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you guys in a little bit with more WCS EU Challenger.